Hey guys, today we're going to do some upgrades on my friend Mal's bike. We're swapping out the stock gear set on this already heavily modified Fuji Absolute 2.1. We're going to switch to a 1x setup with the Microshift Advent X. This drivetrain is fairly inexpensive and is used on a few other bikes in the group we ride with, including both my personal bike and the tandem my wife and I ride. It's been reliable and the wide gear range is great for the types of rides we do. The first problem we come across doing this swap is that the Fuji has a freewheel rear hub, not a cassette. The gears are not compatible between the two, and while the difference is kind of hard to see, you have to make sure you have compatible parts if you're doing any kind of upgrades. The hub that can take a cassette has these splines or ridges on it you can see here. The stock gearing on this Fuji just hasn't quite been up to the challenges the bike's owner has been putting it through. I'm not a bike mechanic. The only experience I have is just jumping in and learning on my own projects. I really do love tinkering and making improvements to bikes, and this bike's owner has done a lot for me over the years, so I jumped at the chance to do something to help him out. You can see here I'm lining up the cassette on the hub. There are cutout splines on the hub, and the cassette will only go on one way. This cassette is not one solid piece, and has a spacer that needs to be put in the right spot. I spent a couple minutes panicking because I was hoping to get this done fairly quickly so we could ride that night, and that spacer was seemingly not in the package. Well, it turns out it was. It just happened to be stuck around the locking ring. So if you happen to do this upgrade yourself, watch out for that. I would not have found that had I not done a quick Google search, and I think it was Reddit that saved the day. But with the spacer found and placed properly in the cassette, we can finish getting it lined up and put on, and tighten it down. By the way, welcome back to the channel, and if beginner cycling, hiking, and running is content you're into, you're in the right spot. Once everything's together, you'll need a special cassette tool to tighten it. I know there are some real good bike tools out there, but I make do okay with some cheap tools I got from Amazon. Get what you can afford to get started. Upgrade what you use the most over time. Yes, there are proper torque specs for this, and for most things really. No, I didn't have, and therefore didn't use a torque wrench. It'll be fine. It had been a while since I had done a full swap on a bike like this, so some of the stuff I do is a little out of order here. Sure, there are right ways and wrong ways to do things, but if you're trying to learn, the best thing to do is jump in and start working. I'm trying to reuse the cables here as they are still like new. The owner has done a great job taking care of this bike. It has no signs of corrosion on it, and it has seen hundreds of miles of riding so far. To get this shifting cable out, you shift up to the hardest gear, and that allows the head of the cable to be grabbed and just pulled right out. As you can see here, it comes out nice and easy. Now I jump back to the back and remove the rear derailleur. I believe it was a 5mm Allen wrench to take this off, and it is threaded in the standard way. Some parts, like pedals and bottom brackets, have reverse thread, so be careful while working on things to not strip something out accidentally. If it seems too tight to be right, best to look it up. Now that the rear derailleur is free, I realized I'll still have to take the chain apart at the quick link to get it off the bike. The new 10-speed uses a thinner chain, which is actually called a 10-speed chain, so the old chain will be relegated to the parts bucket. The chain comes apart at the quick link. Try not to drop these in the grass, they will disappear forever. Now, we'll go ahead and install the new Advent X rear derailleur. It has an integrated 5mm hex bolt that threads into the derailleur hanger. Once you get it tightened down, it is important to make sure it can still rotate freely on the hanger. With that part of the job done, we jump back up to the handlebars to remove the old shifter. I go as carefully as possible here, removing the grip tape, trying to be able to reuse it. It does tear a little bit, but it was still in good enough shape to put back on later. Again, we use a 5mm Allen wrench down into the side of the shifter to loosen it and remove it. It was at this point I realized I also obviously would have to disconnect the rear brake and pull that cable as well. Conveniently, it is also a 5mm Allen wrench to loosen the cable from the rear brake. When you're taking apart the rear brake, be careful not to lose the noodle. That is the little 90-degree bent metal cable housing. With that disconnected, we can pull the brake cable free and remove the brake lever and shifter. The hood, I believe, is another term for it. Now we can go ahead and thread the brake cable into the new Microshift hood and get it onto the bar. Conveniently, the position is very similar and it lines up well in the same spot the old one was. With the cables out, I went ahead and applied some lube. I'm a big fan of Bike Farmer on YouTube, and he uses Tri-Flow for cables, so that's what I like to use too. With the cable back in, we can go ahead and snug up the hood so we can keep working here without it flopping around before we get into its final spot and fully tighten it down. Now I will go ahead and rethread the shifter cable, being careful to keep it from fraying, and also hitting it with the old Tri-Flow while it was out and accessible. Moving back to the rear derailleur, we will need to route and trim the last bit of cable housing to better fit the Advent X and to allow for proper cable tension and shifting. Slipping it on, I realize it is far too long, so I'm going to grab the slide cutters, measure it out where I want it, and cut it down. Then we'll slip it back on and into place. Now we can go ahead and get the rear wheel back on, give it a nice spin, and hear that ratchet. Or at least we could hear it had I done a better job with recording the audio and not had to do a voiceover for this. It's just lost. I'm sorry. Can't pick up that audio. Well, ready. Here you go. Zing. See? It's great. It's great. Just trust me. It was great. So, I get the new chain sized and fitted. A bit of luck is that out of the box, the chain is perfect length here. To size the chain, you go around the biggest gear on the cassette and your front sprocket without routing through the derailleur. You count 2 inner links of chain that would have overlapped each other and would cut there if needed. But again, this chain was the perfect length. Then we'll go ahead, route it through the derailleur, and put it together. Predictably, though, I do lose a quick link into the grass while putting the chain together, so be careful not to do that. The next step is to start tuning the rear derailleur. Microshift themselves have a good YouTube video on doing this, but they save a very important step for last that really needs to be done first, quite honestly. You gotta get the B limit screw set first. Out of the box, this was way off and gave me troubles. I resorted to following their tutorial, and it didn't help until the very end when I realized that was our problem here all along. But with the B limit screw sorted, we get her shifting smooth and just dial it in with fine adjustments up at the handlebar. On the front sprockets, we're just using the middle one. It's the right size and it's going to save us some time and money. Again, I kind of wish I had the sound for you on this because it was running real nice, but just too much traffic and too much wind noise as the storm was getting ready to pick up. Moving on here, I was running out of time and battery on the camera, but I realized I needed to show this. The new rim I bought for this project did not come with rim tape pre-installed. You can see the spoke nipples on the inside of the rim. Without rim tape, they will puncture your inner tube. I had made this mistake years ago on the first bike I built, resulting in a couple of flats and a crash before I figured it out. Hey, you don't know what you don't know until you do. So check to make sure there is rim tape on your wheels before putting a tire and tube on. I'm not showing the tire and tube install here because the battery died. There are plenty of videos with tips and tricks on that out there that make it real easy though. With that, this bike is done. It's tested and tuned and ready for its owner. Please hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Thank you so much for watching and for your support. Now go do something today that makes your life a little better. Get outside, move your body, spend time with someone you love. Just have a great day.